really good spot, and they're going to settle there.
Right, and so they may be migratory peoples that move around, but they have a range. So that's why I have a problem with it. It's not as if they just said, we're always going this direction. So that's my difficulty with it.
Well, it could have been too that if there were, it depends on how many people were crossing the land ridge and migrating over. Because as you know, this is kind of, I think, typical of Stone Age people. They form tribes, and of course, every tribe hates the other tribe and does everything it can to murder the other tribe if that other tribe crosses into its hunting territory.
Yes. So there's a lot of disputes.
And so if you have a bigger, more aggressive tribe pushing in behind you, you might have some pressure to migrate south. On the other hand, if you're just new to, fresh off the boat, and there's a big hostile tribe, you might want to skirt them, go around them, and migrate further south.
So that slows everybody down. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Think about trying. People walk across this country, and they walk on highways, and it's still not an easy process.
No,
all they're carrying is a backpack.
Yeah.
Now think about a tribe of 50, 60 people packing their gear, and there's no roads. That's not an easy trek, and you're looking for food the whole time.
Not at all. I got to tell you, and one reason I like the boat theory is I've seen not just the coastline. I've been all up and down the coast of the western United States, and also a bit of Canada. And the coast in Canada, for example, is basically mountains plunging straight into the ocean. In the absence of roads, I can't imagine what that would be like to try to traverse that on foot. It'd be hideous.
Well, and I think 1,000 years isn't as long as we think it is, right? I mean, in the scope of our human time span on Earth, it is a long time. But is 1,000 years really long enough for enough tribes to be dissatisfied enough to, at least well-populate an area?
That is from Canada to the south tip of South America?
It seems like a push.
It seems to me like there weren't that many people pouring into the country, that there wasn't lots and lots of room for it.
And again, remember, the land bridge overflowed with water again, so it was a very limited time span for people to continually pour in. But
and I think, boats were kind of beating this.
We're belaboring a little bit.
But, boats make sense.
Yeah.
Also, just in terms of, being able to say, oh, yeah, let's keep going. I don't know, this place is kind of nice, so let's keep going. And then, it starts to get bad again, and you're like, oh, I guess we'll just stay here.
There's a million ways that you could look at it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Let's move on.
Yes.
We have another one, and this is the Atlantic coastal model, is what it's referred to. And this,
I kind of like this one.
It's the Solutrean peoples, is what this is.
Solutrean or Solutrean?
Trean. I actually had to do a bunch of research to make sure how to say this. This is the one word I figured out how to say. Solutrean.
The only one.
Yeah. So there's two archaeologists. There's a guy by the name of Dennis Stanford and Bradley.
Wow.
So two archaeologists walk into a bar.
Bradley. And they've really been advocating this Atlantic route theory. And by the way, I am still in the process of reading their book. The book is called Across Atlantic Ice. I really highly recommend it for anybody who's into this kind of prehistory. It lays out some good arguments, and it's really interesting. Very academic book. It'll take me a while to get through, and I think I might have a late fee at the library.
Is there a Cliff Notes version of this book?
I'm afraid not.
Oh, hell.
So here's how it goes. The Solutrean hypothesis, this is based on evidence that comes from the Clovis people. But what they're doing is, instead of tracing the Clovis tool-making style to the Siberian region, they're actually linking it to an area in what it was the Ice Age Western Europe that is the Solutrean culture.
Okay,
so they have a very similar way of working stone. So they're napping stone, they're flaking it, they're making biface stones, but the difference is that where the Clovis kind of had the bottom of the point was flattened off, The Solutreans had it more of a tapered point. If you think of almost like a diamond, elongated.
Essentially, it's like if you think of a dagger blade, they look kind of like a double-ended dagger blade.
Yeah,
like it's
kind
got
of.
2 points to it.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Which is one of the things I was wondering about, is because when I look at the Solutrean flint's points, they don't look that similar to the Clovis points to me.
I agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
Looking at them right now, in fact, on my phone.
Here's what's so hard about this. When they look at the napping style, the stone napping style that is done, and the flaking, and I'm going to do my best to explain this without pictures, but there's a way that you can take a piece of stone and you can put it against another one and push, and instead of just making a shard come off the side, you can actually crack it and roll it in a circular fashion so that, remember the biface?
Yeah.
It goes from one face, rolls and makes a rounded shape, and then pops off the other side.
Nice.
And that way of making these tools was very indicative for a long time of the Clovis people. But they've seen that same style in the Solutrean people's stone.
I guess I feel like...
And nobody else was doing that.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know. It's just like to think that only one culture of peoples could ever develop this technology on their own, independent of each other. It's it's like a little bit of hubris, right?
Well, and that's one of the things that I had put in my notes is I wonder if synchronicity is the word that I think of, but there's another word where 2 or 3 people all come up with the same idea right around the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's this whole like the argument that ancient UFOologists use like for the whole alien thing, right? Is all these pyramids started cropping up at the same time. It's like, well, yeah, because like people are evolving at the same time, and like people are people, and yeah, we have different ideas about things sometimes, but like culturally, you kind of just evolve these ideas, and you make pyramids, and they look a little different, and you have like slightly different techniques, but it's a thing that a culture develops because we are all humans and we are all very similar, despite what you were told as a child that you're like a unique snowflake. You're not.
Yeah, I know.
You're a human being, and like you have the same thoughts that everybody else does, and you go through the same things. And so for me, it's that sort of thing where it's just like, okay, yes, on the one hand, it is a little odd, but on the other hand, it's not that weird.
No, because actually, when you think about it too, there's only so many ways to make an arrowhead or a spearhead.
That's true.
And that is a very good point.
Yeah, there's only So, and I think we've exhausted them all.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. The one weird thing is that there is such a huge distance gap because that style is seen in a Clovis and it's seen in a Solutrean, but it is not seen in anywhere in Asia or the Siberia region around the same time. So it's independent on a continental scale, which is what they're pointing at. Now, I understand that. I just want to bring that out because there's some things that kind of shoot some holes in this theory.
Well, and I guess I'll just like point out again that if it is in fact even a continental thing, right, is that, well, then maybe that has more to do with the way that the stone in the United States or the like continent of America breaks than the stone in Europe. I mean,
Chert is, I believe, is the general name of the stone.
Yeah.
I might be wrong on that,
I mean, if they're
but
made
that
of
stone
similar
does come
stone.
up in different areas. It's naturally occurring.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just
It's very hard to say.
knows?
Detractors of this theory, they point out at, there's about a 5,000 year gap between the two cultures.
sure.
That's a bit of a problem.
So they're saying that. So they documented the Solutrean people in Europe, and they were exactly when?
They were about 5,000 years different, and I believe it's before the Clovis.
Before the Clovis people.
Yeah, and now I might have that flip-flopped, and it might be that the Clovis were first and the Solutreans were second, but I don't believe that would have led this theory to come out. So I've got to say that the Solutreans were first, and they were in Europe. So this theory, the way this theory is going, is just to kind of, before we get into the detraction side of it, is it's kind of the same as people coming from the Asian continent through Siberia. They're instead saying, well, these guys came up and they floated along on the ice sheets, and they went through what would be Greenland and Iceland, and then got into Canada and worked their way south into the American continent, hunting and finding whatever they could in those areas, because there's going to be critters that are still going to live in those marine ecosystems. People have said, well, you know what, it'd be freezing cold and it's very weatherproof yourself, and we don't see any evidence of that, which we've talked about with the boats.
Yeah.
The same thing. I think that evidence would have disappeared by this time.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, the thing about this, the people that put this theory forth basically said that they skirted the edge of the ice sheet during the Ice Age.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I see it, before the Ice Age, they could have actually made their migration. I don't know if you looked at a map of the North
Oh, no,
Atlantic.
it's quite possible. They're saying they're kind of playing in a gray area.
Yeah, you can hop from, like, say Britain to Iceland, or say Scandinavia to Iceland. It's not that far apart. And then from there to Greenland, it's not very far. So
No, it's not very. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm not saying that they were literally paddling alongside a glacier.
Yeah, but no,
But they
other
were looking
people
for areas
other
they could
people
get
have put
onto.
that theory forth. And,
Yeah.
and I think they probably did it under, probably earlier in time.
Mm-hmm.
Came here.
And that's one of the things people bash on this theory about. They also go back to that DNA evidence, which shows that, as they've talked about before, there's no European signs in that DNA from it's the mitochondrial DNA, and there's a term that they throw around which is called, and this is going to be important for everybody who wants to go out and do the reading, because this will help you a lot, because it took me a long time to figure it out, is they will use the term haplogroup.
No, haplogroup.
Haplogroup, thank you.
Haplogroup.
I cannot say words today that are scientific.
Yeah.
Basically what that means is that is people who descend from a common ancestor.
This is what they do the testing for these days, when you like say, oh, the son of the sun is gonna like do the mouth swab and then like, be able to track it. That's what they're tracking.
Basically, yes. In a very simplified version, yes. Over thousands of years.
This crazy science, the only way I can even like mildly comprehend it is by like simplifying it to the lowest common.
Believe me, I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
So now, you remember I talked about Stanford and Bradley?
Yeah.
They came right back with a bunch of issues to throw at the land bridge theory that we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, the Clovis culture.
Yeah, and there's actually some really good points that they bring up. The first of which is
you're in the middle of an ice age. It's going to be friggin' cold.
Yeah, so you're in the northern hemisphere.
Why would you be in the northern?
And at the high summers, it's like 60 degrees. Second of all, what do we see in terms of light cycles in the northern hemisphere? We go from days of dark to days of light and then back. I don't know of a culture moving through there that would be able to stand that, just freshly coming into that. Do you see where I'm headed?
Well,
That would be a shock.
I mean, I guess like if we're gonna just for argument's sake, like if they were living in Siberia, they were pretty freaking used to
probably,
that.
that's a good point.
You know, like they were used to the freezing cold, they were used to the weird light cycles, and people currently in this in this day and age live in areas like that.
That's very true.
You know, granted, like we have better technology, but it's not like they moved there after the technology existed. They've lived there forever, and
very true.
You know, so I guess to play a little bit of
No. I appreciate devil's advocate on that. But here's the other thing that they bring up that I really had never thought of, which is when the land bridge emerged from the water, it was gonna be mud.
Yeah.
It was going to be mucky ground. It wasn't going to be hard packed. It was easy to walk on. It's going to be marshy. It's going to be boggy. And how in the world are you going to walk through that chasing game? Game aren't going to go through that easily. It's going to take a long time for that to dry out.
Well, not just dry out, but actually game aren't going to go there because there's nothing for them to eat.
Yeah.
Until plants start growing there, and that's going to take a while.
Yeah, and then there's the other thing, another thing they brought up, which is in that region, the first thing that comes in those marshy environments is the insects, which are like no-see-ums and mosquitoes and that kind of...
mosquitoes as big as sparrows.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just, again, it doesn't seem like a place that I would say, hey, family. Let's go truck through that bog and see what's on the other side.
Yeah.
Hopefully we make out and we find some food. Again, I understand I'm simplifying, but these are things that I see that I'm like, I don't know.
I would think
want to go through it.
I would think that the thing that would cause that is not the great old spirit of exploration, but pressures either from competitive tribes that want to slaughter you, number one, or two, you've killed off all the game in your area and you need to migrate to go find somewhere else to hunt.
Well, but as you said, like, it's not super likely that that's how things are migrating to the Americas. Anyways, I mean, it's not like a bunch of woolly mammoths are going to be like, oh yeah, mud.
Yeah.
We're going to lumber through this. There's no food. This is where we're going. That's not going to happen.
I don't know that it would have
from
taken
the Ice Age movie, hey, Sully, or whatever his name was. Yeah, they're not going to do that.
No, they're not. I mean, if there's not food there, they're not going to go there. And there's not food there. So why?
Well, no, I mean, there would be food there in a relatively quick time, I think, that probably,
but not
after
enough
100 years.
to sustain a herd.
Yeah.
I guess is
It's
what
definitely not enough to sustain a herd large enough to warrant following the herd, right?
I don't think it would have taken like 1,000 years.
No, but even a couple hundred, like...
It would take a while.
That puts a ding in the timeline.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, that's a very good point that they make, though.
Yeah.
Here is one of the pieces of evidence that really sparked the whole Solutrean people hypothesis.
Sure.
This happened in 1974. There's guys fishing, and I believe they were drag netting, and they were outside of Chesapeake Bay.
They were a ways offshore.
They were ways offshore. They're a couple hundred feet. They're dragging a couple hundred feet down.
Yeah.
And they hit something really big and heavy, and they hauled it up, and it turned out to be a mastodon skull.
Oh.
Yeah. What a
Said
cool
mastodon.
souvenir that would be.
Very cool, but it was too big and heavy for them to actually lug all the way back to shore. So what they did is they cut off parts of the tusk and parts of the teeth and gave them to everybody on the boat as souvenirs, and then they chucked it back overboard.
For God's sake.
Wasn't there like a stone tool in it or something?
That was stuck in part of the, I believe it was the tusk what it was stuck in.
And they took it.
And they took it.
That's good at least.
So the people, it was stuck in it. They didn't know what they had.
Well, but they could have just chucked it back in.
That's very true.
Can I just say one thing?
Eventually the people who had it donated it.
Can I just say one thing? These guys were boneheads. Because
no pun intended.
Even if you don't have room on your boat and you can't handle the weight of the skull, what you do is you're in a couple hundred feet of water. You tie a rope a couple hundred feet long with a buoy on the other end of it to the skull, so you can come back and get it. Hello?
If they realize what they
or
had,
you stick it back in the net and drag it behind you.
Yeah, something.
Like not super deep, and you're fine.
You pull up a mastodon skull, you gonna throw it back in?
No.
No.
I'm not an idiot, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Throw that out there.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, but yeah, and this is an interesting thing because a couple hundred feet down, that's about where the ancient coastline used to be.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Is that
as I
that's
said a
where
little
the
earlier,
coastline would have been? Yeah.
If we could start exploring that ancient coastline down there, and even it's not just one coastline. I mean, sea level has been rising for thousands of years. So
yeah,
anywhere between a couple hundred feet down and shoreline, you're going to find artifacts.
Yeah.
But
those are hard to find now because they're under sediment and mud and muck and all that stuff.
And they're a couple hundred feet down, and obviously, we can't go down and just ripping up the seafloor.
No,
I mean,
no.
it'd be fun, but it probably wouldn't be good for the sea life.
Yeah, and we're gonna move on from the Solutreans. I mean, there's been other evidence that have shown that maybe people were doing these marine lifestyles, the mariners, so to speak.
Yeah, Waterworld.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that are outside of the Channel Islands in California that are showing evidence of artifacts that are from like 10,000 BCE. Mm-hmm. There's all these things, and people keep saying that there could have been possible failed colonization.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I want to get into, because that kind of comes into my final thoughts about this whole thing.
Well, actually, but to hold off for a second, the Solutreans,
Solutreans. The one word I can say tonight.
Yeah, essentially, a few people believe that they migrated here. And a lot of other scientists believe that no, they never ever did. Right? Correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
People couldn't see me shaking my head. I had to say something. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make that. But again, this mastodon skull was pulled up with essentially kind of a Salutrian spear point.
And it was dated at 22,000 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So lends a little credence to the theory.
It really does. And
But I guess it's also fair to say that none of these theories necessitate mutual exclusivity.
And that's problem. Okay, so I think
Sorry, am I jumping ahead?
No. I was just gonna say is that I think we've said is that the problem is all these dates we're working with are soft.
Yeah, they're really soft, and it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say yeah, it's totally possible that the Salutrians came over and tried to colonize, and we have all this information